in favor of retaining Commissioner Eritz as Vice Chair, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right. Moving on. Item number 1, acceptance of final 2022-2023 audit.
We'll introduce the auditor to give us some color on the audit.
I am Megan Connors. I am the principal auditor at Pinion here in Great Falls, who conducted your audit for the year ended June 30, 2023. Just want to say thank you, big thank you to John and Laura, especially. I've been working with you guys for 10 years now. This is our last year conducting the audit, and also a big kudos to Shailene for her responsiveness, her ability to facilitate the completion of this audit. It was great working with her, the end of last year's audit and then into this year's audit. So thank you guys. We have already reviewed the audited financial statements in detail with the Finance Committee, so I'm just going to provide a really quick high overview detail of the audited results, and then hope for acceptance and approval today. Just to quickly remind everybody, government financial statements typically include about 5 different areas. The first is management's discussion and analysis, which is really John's narrative and story behind the financial statements and the footnotes. It really puts the story behind the numbers versus just our financial statements, and footnotes are really developed in accordance with accounting standards. So there really isn't a lot of leeway for you to kind of understand the qualitative things that have happened behind what the fiscal year. So I think it's really good information. Just want to point that out, that's crucial for the board to read and understand and make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then we've got our financial statements and the footnotes. Really no big changes to that outside of the implementation of a new government auditing standard, accounting standard related to conduit debt, which did have an impact on the financial statements for some leases that had some related conduit debt obligations attached to them. Those are no longer reported by the airport, so it removed the debt, the lease activity, and those related assets. At the end of those agreements, when that debt is paid,
AVMAX, right?
yes, it's AVMAX.
The AVMAX financing.
So when that debt is paid off, either they will choose to retain a purchase option that's allowed in that lease and everything will continue. Should they not exercise that, all the assets and everything else will go back on their authority's books at that time. So it's kind of an interesting standard to just kind of wipe everything out and then possibility of putting it back on, but that's kind of the way that the standard worked. So that was implemented this year. Any of the other GASBs didn't have an impact on the airport authorities, so they had no financial impact. There is additional sections in the back, what we call kind of our schedule of findings and recommendations, that does have 3 different reports in the back. But I would be remiss in not talking about the audit opinion in the front. For the financial statements, we are issuing a cleaner, unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements. The results in the back include our internal controls and financial reporting. So there's an additional report required for government audits that talks about if there's any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, of which we do have one, simply related to the number of audit adjustments that we had to post during the audit. Then we have to do an audit of compliance over the AIPs. So we look at non-compliance or compliance. And then we also look at internal controls over compliance. We have no findings to report related to non-compliance or internal controls over such. And then last and not least, unique to airports, we are required to do an audit over the passenger facility charges that come in and go out. So we have a report similar in wording in the back related to compliance over that program, and then the internal controls, and there was no findings there. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or open it up to hopeful acceptance and approval.
I guess we should start with thank you. We'll miss you for all the help for the last several years. So sad to see you go. I appreciate all the help you've given us for the last couple of years, and I know Shailene appreciates it too. Anything you want to talk about from the Finance Committee meeting?
Just overall, the reconciliation process is on a path now to where this will be the last year that we'll have that finding, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm real encouraged about that.
Yeah, and I think
it's important
to note that, her coming in halfway through last year's audit, then having, some staffing changes close to year end this year and going through that process. She and I have spent some additional time together in the last few weeks just to help her understand some of those audit adjustments on a much more detailed level. So
Well, she's been here more than a year, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah, that was my takeaway from the finance committee meeting was obviously we have the strengths. It has been an issue before, either directly related or somewhat related, but I think that we do have a way forward now at this point with a little bit of continuity. Granted, now we'll have a new auditor again, so we're losing that continuity, but overall, no big concerns. We want this one to be better next year. Obviously, we keep saying that. I think this will be the year potentially.
Other than reconciliation and categorization of some of the expenses and stuff, I mean, it was pretty clean audit.
yeah. It's been kind of the similar issues, very limited things, but cause for major adjustments. Yeah.
Anything you want to say on it, Joe?
No, I mean, I think overall, just to offer some comments on the year. It was a strong year. It was our second time we've reached $5 million in revenue in the history of the airport. Second best year in terms of operating revenue. We knew we would have a slight downturn because FedEx, the termination of their lease last fiscal year resulted in some one-time revenue that we knew was going to be there. It's about $600,000 worth. And so, the fact that our operating revenue is $250,000 lower than last year isn't surprising, but a really good result, for us going forward. Operating expense-wise, we had a lot of growth. We knew that. We really put the lid on everything after COVID started. And so our operating expenses dropped substantially the following couple of years there. We didn't replace staff positions that turned over in our LEO category, that type of thing. And so, to see the revenue growth this year, or the expense growth this year, we expected that. I believe it was around 14%. I'm pretty sure it's about 14-15% growth. And that was really with adding a new position in the LEO department to kind of get us up to full staffing, and escalation on our cleaning contract, escalation on our security contract. Anything that wasn't tied to the ground was escalating, as we all know. And so I think overall a really strong year. If you look at the balance sheet, you can see we reinvested as we said we were going to, and we're going to use up some of our reserves, use that to buy capital projects, which we did. And got a lot done in that fiscal year, and now we're back to where we've got reserves built again for the next round of capital. So I think all in all, it's a really strong year financially, and I think structurally, we've got to make some different changes to how we do the accounting year end and that kind of thing to clean up a couple of those results, and then we'll be working with the new auditor after, gosh, how many years in total going back to the mergers? I mean, it's got to
Oh my
be
gosh, yeah.
20 or more, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so that'll be new challenges for a new year.
Any other comments, questions, concerns from the board? Any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to accept 23-24, 22-23 audit.
All right, I have a motion. Any additional discussion? Can I get a second? All right, got a motion and a second to accept the 2022-2023 audit. All in favor say aye. Aye. And nay. The ayes have it.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure you don't want to stick around for the next 3 hours while we finish this?
I'm not sure I want to.
All right, item number 2, airport parking violation ordinances and policy.
As excuse me, as discussed, I guess back in November, in the last 10 plus years I've been here, we've gone through a couple of city attorneys and staff down in community planning, and we've got a couple of regimes of issuing parking tickets up here. We fall within the city, so I mean, obviously the city can come up and write whatever, but practically speaking, that's not practical. It's, we don't have officers up here daily, and that would be too far, to get them to come up and police our parking, obviously. So there for a while we had some old parking tickets that When the city went to a digital system, they just gave us some tickets and said, you can go ahead and write these. And so we had been doing that for, it seems like 10 years or so. When the city changed over city attorneys, we met with them again, kind of reshuffled that a little bit back when Sarah Sexy was city attorney, and kept doing it. And so the revenue all goes to the city in that case. But then with the installation of a new city attorney and new community planning folks, they really wanted to formalize an agreement and have some type of written agreement about how that could all work. They expressed some reservations about the idea of our officers writing these tickets. And in discussing it with our officers, they really felt the best practice would probably be to go ahead and implement our own parking ordinances and then allow them to pursue those parking ordinances. And so I think that does give us a little bit more control over what's going on out there. I would say day to day, we sort of have the two classes of violations we're trying to get our hands on. The first is we kind of have a lot of employees misbehaving from the various organizations that are here. The rental cars have gotten kind of cavalier and just leaving the cars by the door, and even encouraging passengers to do that, which oftentimes we end up with 3 or 4 in there and then no one can get through. And then the other class is the folks that are parking in the metered lot. A lot of the airline employees like to come steaming in right before that shift, and that lot's the quickest way to get into the work. And so they just come rolling in, park in the metered lot, and then come in. And the problem with that is a couple weeks ago we had, in that cold temperatures, it froze our ticket spitter on the daily lot over there. And so with that frozen solid, a lot of people just opted to go into the hourly lot. And so we had a lot of passengers going in, parking in hourly, and we ran out of spots. So then people that come up and want to pick someone up, there's nowhere for them to park because the metered lot's full. I don't think anybody was currently on the board when we put that in place, but the whole idea of the metered lot, for a while there when the Canadians were doing real well, they were just parking in the hourly lot because it was cheap and convenient, and so that lot was constantly full. And then when you came up to pick someone up, you had nowhere to park. So the curb front became a zoo. And so we came up with the idea of using what used to be, I think, an old commercial bus lot that someone built in the past. We converted that over to a metered lot with a metered machine that limits your parking to 2 hours. The idea being if you're just coming up and you need to run in and get something or pick someone up, that gives you an option that is quick turnover that we know will turn over quickly and always have spots available. A lot of our vendors use it if they're coming up to get a badge or something like that. It's just a convenient option for everybody, and we can kind of control the turnover so that we always have some stalls open. Surprisingly, in what looks like a large area, after we get done with all the handicap requirements, the hourly lot down there has surprisingly few stalls, only a few dozen. So that fills up relatively quickly when we have like a wedding or something where people know they're not going to be up there very long, and having that metered lot is a nice outlet. So certainly we don't want employees clogging it up. So that's kind of the first class. The second class is, particularly during the holidays, we get a lot of people that will park in the curb front here, necking it down to 1 lane, if even that, and they'll park in the crosswalks, which is my personal least favorite. And so especially if there's snow on the ground, we added blinking signs at the crosswalks and everything, but that doesn't stop them. And I've literally been out there watching a gal with a stroller trying to navigate between SUVs and thinking to myself, this lady's likely to get killed if we're not careful. And so, I went out myself and said, you gotta go, and you get the, well, I'm only here for, no, you're not, go. So, we have to unfortunately at times be stern about that one and getting people off that curb front. Otherwise, we are gonna get someone hurt out there. With the number of trucks and SUVs that everyone drives here, you cannot see the shorter pedestrians at all coming in from that parking lot if everyone's blocking both sides. So those are kind of the general things. We don't want to use it to harass. We don't want to use it to be a revenue source. We want to get behavior kind of back in line. That's why we've developed these ordinances that you see here to try and adopt something that is easy for us to implement. It's not particularly high fees or anything. We've tried to moderate everything to one of 3 categories. Almost everything's $30. There's some things that are 50. What's 50?
Fire hydrants 50 and handicap.
Handicap's 100, which is the state.
Everything
Everything in the state, handicap's 100. So we just adopted what the state has. We frankly probably, don't tell anybody, we probably won't police that very much. You know, we don't really go out and look who's parked in the handicap stalls, if there's some available, but like the other day, one of our police came in and said, hey, you know, the Subaru's parked in, you know, just in a dotted line area, they kind of shoved it in there, you know, where there's not supposed to be a car, we had a handicap sticker, but no, we would never ticket that because the handicap stalls are full, you know, and so in that case, you know, if they needed help getting in, you know, we're not gonna ticket that, and so, you know, we've got to, you know, work with our police to set the right tone and tenor of, you know, when to use these, when not to use these. I'd say the biggest category right now is we just have a lot of folks taking advantage of us not having a ticketing system right now. So that's why the nature of what we're trying to do. Laura, do you want to speak? There were some questions in November that you've tried to adjust in this since November.
Yeah, just the concerns from the board in that meeting were to have the fines be consistent, so we did move everything to 30 instead of having that $20 one. Also to add that handicap spot in, which we did, or a violation in. And then the last thing was just talking about the liability that we may have if we put a boot on someone and they don't know it's there and they take off or whatnot. And we talked to the attorney, and of course there can be some liability there with that boot. But he said the key is that we are conspicuously putting a note on the car immediately, and that we have somebody there. Having somebody there 24/7 within a few minutes to come and talk to that person and get the boot off their car, whether they need to pay the fine now or not. But that was what he was concerned with in that situation. So he feels good with this policy. What we talked to him about a little more is, well, if we don't have the boot, what bite do we have? And how do we, what are we going to do? We don't want to have a full-time court situation or chasing people to pay fines or anything like that.
We don't want to send anybody to collections.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really what we're looking to do.
Right, so it really was, the boot is our bite. And so he's okay with it, and like John said, it's a last case scenario that we're going to use that, but at least we do have something if we get to that point.
The other thing we'll likely use is badge suspensions. You know, if you're getting parking violations and you're not paying them, you know, we'll probably with the airside people, that's a pretty easy thing we can do is say, okay, you know, your badge is turned off until you come pay your fee, and so we can use that with them. But that doesn't work with the rental car companies because they don't have any secure access, so they don't even have a badge. You know, so we need something to kind of, you know, keep them from, you know, doing naughty stuff with the cars. You know, that gets their attention, and that's where the boot's helpful.
Have you talked to the LEOs about this? I guess my concern is it's going to become a burden for them when they could be doing
Other things.
more important things.
Well, I mean, I would say, yeah, it is going to become a burden, but, you know, what I would say is it's a pretty important thing. I mean, because many times that rental car lot is stacked up and we've got passengers trying to catch a flight and return that car, and they're the ones out there honking. A lot of times we're alerted to it because someone comes up and reports it to us, hey, I can't even get in to return my car because they've got this lane blocked up. You know, and so that's what I would say is, you know, I mean, it's impactful to our customer that we're clogging up the crosswalks and the rental car lane where they can't even use them, and you know, and don't have any capacity in the metered lot. I mean, those are impacts directly to our customer, and we need to clean that up some. I frankly think we're going to have a lot of enforcement at the beginning, and then that's going to die off, and everyone's going to understand the new regime. Just like, I'm going to give you an example. We implemented access control. The very next day, we had 3 door violations. 2 airlines, 3 door violations. You know, and we're like, we've been talking about this for a year. You know, and I mean, enforcing, you know, telling them, look, right now we will write you up if you're not checking the door after you leave it. But once we get these new doors, you're going to have to, because those magnetic locks have very low tolerance. You know, so if there's a wind pocket keeping the door open, you're going to leave the air side completely open. Well, one of the 3 left the door propped open with a doorstop, you know, to the airfield out there, and you know, it's just open. You know, we're like, this is the first weekend, you know, but since then, I don't know of any violations.
I don't think we've had.
You know, so we suspended 3 badges, I think, two badges, and we made 1 person retrain. That was 2 weeks ago, and since then we haven't had another violation. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen. Is we'll probably go in these gluts of, you know, employees behaving badly, glut, you know, and then everything goes back to normal. employees behaving badly. Out on the curb front, most of the time, all we have to do is go out there and say, you can't park there, it's a crosswalk, and they go. So I think if at times we just have an officer sweep through there, but every once in a while, you get the person that wants to talk about it for an hour, and that's the one that's probably getting the ticket, because we don't have an hour to talk about it. You gotta move that car, you can't leave it unattended. In light of, that's what shocks me the most, in light of everything we've got going on right now. We have people leaving box trucks out on the front curb unattended, and we're like, what's that? Who's that? And yet it still happens.
So will you talk a little bit about the actual fine and the collection process? Because I can envision someone being out there, your office is closed. Who's collecting the money? Are you taking cash, credit cards?
We have a Clover machine,
that?
so
No
we can-
cash.
Yeah.
We need to have the trail, so it's
Yeah.
all gonna have to be through credit card or
Yeah.
check.
And our policemen routinely carry the Clover because if the parking lot, if somebody gets into a lane and they can't get the thing to work, they'll do it over the phone, with them. So they're carrying a Clover anyway. So, what I would say is, we'll give you, 2 weeks to get it paid. You can come to the office during office hours and get it paid, and we'll be done with it. And hopefully we won't write very many. I don't suspect we'll write more than 2 or 3. The word travels really fast when these things start.
And this remains in perpetuity until we take other action if something needed to be changed, so. Okay.
How many boots are we gonna have?
Just one. You can buy them on Amazon, like $80.
You need more than one boot.
Put it all 4
Because as
wheels.
soon as I see that boot's in use, game over. That's gonna spread too. They've only got one. And the guys
They
are.
can't kill us
They
all.
don't need to know that.
They can't get us all. That's a good point.
And then Sean's gonna come up and bark, because he knows the boot is being used.
Cinder block and a chain.
Yeah, that's what I said, is do we really need to move the center block and the chain will be used in CTAC? But then one day, one of our officers made a mistake of changing his bumper, and the guy just put the center block in the back of his truck and laughed.
Respect. Now you're out of center block. All right, any further comments, questions, or concerns on parking violations policy? All right, can I have a motion to adopt the proposed parking ordinances policy?
I so move.
Got a motion, any further discussion? Can I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And nay. The ayes have it. Item number 3, Oakwell's agreement extension.
Yeah, so the Oakwell's folks still want to move ahead with that kitchen upgrade. They want to be able to make burgers in there, and so they need a fan and a hood that expels through the ceiling. The total cost of that we think is about $100,000. They're also going to take out the old beverage island air hose. When we redid that space, had that kind of little beverage island across from the bathrooms there, which Oakwell's has never used. And so they're going to take that out and putting a high bar with a charging station, so people could sit there and charge their phone, which I think is a great idea. And so we've met with them and kind of said, look, if we expand the concourse here in another year or two, there's an opportunity for a large kitchen back in there. We can kind of put it where Delta's whole room is now, and Delta's going to shift around the corner. But they still feel this is probably the right move for them. So they'd like to move ahead with $100,000 in repairs. We'd like to extend their contract for 3 years in order to help recover that cost, which is similar to other extensions we've done recently. When they did the upstairs third floor party rooms, we did an extension at about the same size. And so they were initially on a 15-year contract. This would take them out to what year, Laura, with 3 years?
37? 2037.
2037 is the expiration now, so they'll be here for a while.
So if we extend this, is there any way to hold them to their end of making these improvements?
Well, we wouldn't give them the extension until it's
Until
done.
it's done.
Yeah, and then we'd execute the extension. But, we've never had any issue with them doing what they've said.
They're doing it regardless of if
Yeah.
you give them the
Yeah,
extension, so.
They really feel they're missing a lot of sales by not having a way to make hot food over there. They have a panini press, but that really limits your menu, of course.
I move that we grant the 3-year extension.
All right, I've got a motion. Any further discussion? Can I get a second? Got a motion and a second to extend the Oak Wells contract for 3 years. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And nay. Ayes have it. Item number 4, capital expense fountain repair.
Yeah, for background, last fall, we had someone climb up on the fountain, presumably to get a picture with the cougar. They snapped off some rocks. Obviously, that's not meant to hold people. So they snapped off some rocks, and then when the cougar fell down in the pool, it seems as though when they got up to get out of the pool, they must have ruptured either the lining of the pool at the bottom or possibly one of the pipes underneath. So now when we fill that fountain up, we get water migrating out onto the terrazzo. Probably there's water under there too. So we've got to get that fixed. It's taken us quite a while to find anyone that works on these fountains. As best we can tell, there's only still one left around that does this type of work. Laura has identified them. We do have a quote that was supposed to go out in the packet. Did you pass
They
that
got
on?
it afterwards.
Yeah, you got it afterwards. It had some personal information from Laura on there, so it was, our admin elected to pull it out, which is good. Checking people's personal information, but it would have been better if we would have gotten it out to you a little sooner. But we do have a company in line to go up and repair it. It's now 20 years old. It needs to be recolored. They're recommending a water softener and filtration system that will take more of the mineral content out of the water. You can see the scale that it's caused both on the current rock areas and on the side of the escalator. They're fairly confident that some additional filtration and softening could prevent the scaling. So we're hopeful that by adding that and keeping that water a little clearer, we can avoid some of the damage. 20 years is not a bad useful life for something like this, which is what we got out of it. So if we can extend that even further, it's probably worth making this repair. It is expensive, but in light of other options, the only other thing I could think to do would be to build some type of dry creek bed up there with more taxidermy. We could certainly do that, take out the water feature. That would have a longer life probably than the water feature itself. But this is something synonymous with our building. If you go out on YouTube, there's been a lot of videos posted of people going up the escalator, filming the waterfall and the cougar. Surprisingly, kind of an organic story locally. We got a call from the radio station asking what happened to the cougar many months ago, and that kind of bounced around the community some. The truth was stranger than fiction. They thought we just removed it. We're like, no, it was vandalized and ruined. And so, I think there is interest in having this feature back from the community. So we're asking for $14,000.
No,
I'm sorry.
That's a
incorrect?
mistake on there. So
Because it's $16,000.
it's
for that.
$17,556.05 for everything that Greenleaf has recommended here, but then the taxidermy is above and beyond that.
So it's going to be about $20,000.
20,000
Yeah, so about $20,000 to put everything back in place. Our cougar is ruined. It got in the water. Not only was the framing broke and cracked, but once you get that hair wet, it doesn't really recover from that. And the tail's completely busted. So we're going to have to find a new cougar somewhere. So if you know anyone, we're in the market for a nice cougar.
No, we've had this discussion before. It should go to a bear. It was a cat for a while, now it should go to a bear.
You
right,
can't-
Laura?
No.
Absolutely not.
See what I did? See what I did? Yeah, give him a jacket.
Beyond the Bobcat Grizz thing, I'll tell you what, it is. Daily, they want the cougar back.
Yeah.
They don't want a bear back, they want a cougar back.
And we do have a
There
grizzly
was
at the top
a
of the
bear, we should
stairs.
try it.
Yeah.
And hey, it's a cougar, not a bobcat.
I think a mountain would be cool personally.
Should we approve around 20 then?
Yeah.
instead of just-
Yes,
Yeah.
we should approve 20.
Yeah.
That was, this didn't get updated, I don't think.
No,
I'll make a motion to approve 20,000 to repair the fountain by the escalators.
20,000, then that will include the taxidermy.
yes.
All right, I have a motion for an amount not to exceed $20,000 to repair the fountain to include taxidermy. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right, item number 5, emergency capital repairs, jet bridge leveling threshold.
Yes, so the loading bridges that are out in the airfield right now, all 4 of them have a leveling system. It involves kind of a roller skate wheel that goes out and touches the exterior of the plane. That's intended to sense movement in the airplane as the plane gets weighted with fuel and luggage. Surprisingly, that plane